It's somewhat traditional for a preacher to start off with a story. So this morning I'm going to tell you a story. Some of it is based on the truth. That's just like the movies. It's based on a true story, right? All right, here we go. Did you know that here in this very building, last Friday afternoon, there was a hold-up? A hold-up. Yeah. Several ladies and myself who were had volunteered, and we were painting downstairs when a man appeared coming down the stairs, an intruder. As any red-blooded male would do, I immediately pointed my weapon at this intruder and says, "What do you want?" Now, one of the ladies, I guess she must be an Anabaptist, she said, "Ralph, don't you know what the sixth commandment says?" I said, "Yes, it says, shoot him before he shoots you." Now, the other two ladies that were there happened to be the mother and the grandmother of the intruder. And so I knew that they would likely protect him rather than me. And I was pretty well sunk at that point, so I dropped my case. I was silenced in shame. Now, all that and fun. My weapon was a cordless drill. That feels like a gun, though, doesn't it? When you hold it? Yeah. It's kind of fun. But it does raise a question. It raises the question, do you have an enemy? Is there someone that you really hate in your life? Or maybe you're not like that. Is there someone that really irks you? Is there someone that you just don't like? What do you do if that person is part of your family? Or is a fellow student at school? Or somebody that works at the same station in your workplace as where you are? There are various ways of getting rid of your enemy. And we're going to look at two for now. The first one happened 1,300 years ago. Most of us were not born then. And the other one happened much later in 1999. I think somebody in this building was born that year. Maybe several of us, who knows. So this has to do with the Crusaders. You might have heard of the Crusaders. That happened in the 1100 to 1300 AD. In Genesis chapter 12 to 23, we read about Abraham. You all know about Abraham. God promised Abraham and his descendants a large tract of land, which would be roughly between the Mediterranean Sea and what is now Iraq. And that's why the Jews have long considered that land as theirs, particularly the Holy Land, Palestine. But you remember that Abraham and Sarah were unable to have a baby. So Sarah suggested that Abraham take their maid as his concubine, a second wife, and sure enough, Hagar got pregnant, and Ishmael was born, the father of the Arabic people. Now, the Arabic Muslims feel that since Abraham is their father as well, that they should have a piece of the pie. That's what we've been hearing about now since October the 7th, and many years before that. This is not the first time they've had a conflict there. It's a long-standing issue. Well, by 1100 AD, the Arabic Muslims had taken over the Holy Land. Not only were the Jews concerned, the Catholic Church was concerned as well. So the Catholics organized what they called crusades to recapture the Holy Land. After all, this is where Jesus, the hero of all Christians, had walked. The word crusade comes from the Latin word C-U-R-X. I'm not sure how you say that in Latin. It sounds like crux to me. Crusaders sewed symbols of the cross on their tunics. To take up the cross meant to become a crusader. Now, Pope Urban II saw the crusade as an opportunity to bring glory to the church. One day he gave a stirring sermon. He urged the knights of Europe to stop fighting each other and to urge them to rescue the Holy Land from the Turks. The assembly was aroused and they began to shout, "God wills it! God wills it!" Preachers such as Herman I didn't say that right, Peter the Hermit rather, spread the enthusiasm and thousands of people signed up. Bloody battles were fought, all in the name of Christ. It's now a holy war. God is on our side, and that makes it all right to slaughter the enemy. Now, we would never do that, or would we? Now, this is just my personal opinion. This is not directly from the Bible, so take it for what it's worth. But after looking at both sides of the issue, as we all do, I'm not alone in this, I've come to the conclusion that army generals should probably rely more on the Old Testament for direction. And while the church takes its marching orders from the whole Bible, when there are apparent, A-P-P-A-R-E-N-T, apparent discrepancies, as there are between the Old and the New Testament, then we go to the most recent testament, which is the New Testament. I talked about that the last time I spoke here. I won't repeat. You know, the most recent email is the one that has the weight, right? If it's different from the first one. So even, and yet, now here's the yet part, and yet General Omar Bradley, I've never met him, but he's a former U.S. Army Chief of Staff, said this: "We have grasped the mystery of the atom and rejected the Sermon of the Mount." That's an interesting statement coming from a general, right? Retired general. Well, Chief of Staff anyway. So I think of unconditional love in this way. When we lived in Birch River, there was a lot of veterans in that area. Birch River is just north of Swan River, half-horse town. And there were, on November the 11th, that was the holiest day for these veterans. They came with their white gloves on their rough hands, and they, you know, carried in the flag, and they did the last post. And you know, after the service was over, they would recount some of their successful missions that they had. But a successful missions means that some people die. And so there's a mixed feelings, I'm sure, as they were recalling the stories. And you know, here we are. I was a Low German Mennonite that moved into that community, and like, what's this guy doing here? He speaks German. The Nazis were German. His dad didn't want to go and fight. He went before Judge Adams here in Winnipeg, and he got conscientious objection. Yeah, you go and work in the bush, all your money goes to the Red Cross, but that's not the same as, you know, risking life and limb, as they say. Maybe these guys are yellow. Maybe, you know, what about these people that have moved into my farmland here in Birch River? So it was a bit of a, you know, it's a hard time getting traction as a Mennonite church in that community because of what I've said, and maybe that wasn't going through their head, but I think it might have been. So what does a pacifist, and I'm not talking about passing your fist now, like, what does a pacifist contribute to the war effort? What does a pacifist contribute to the war effort? I like to divide it up into three parts. Before the war starts, we can work for peace. We can do food distribution. We can drill wells for poor people. We can help people, single parents. We can do all sorts of things, right? We can try to prevent war by keeping the peace, being good Christians, good Canadians too. During the war, the Anabaptist, the pacifist, will be somewhat lamed. We don't shoot very well. That cordless drill has no bullets in it. It didn't even have a cord. So it's a time for us to pray And we might contribute money to the Red Cross. Some of the Mennonite Brethren people would actually go through basic training and apparently would carry stretchers, I've been told. So that was their contribution. They didn't carry arms, but they were willing to go through the training and to be involved in rescuing people who had been shot and who were wounded. So that's during the war. But then after the war's over, and a lot of things have happened, right? There's damage. Like Germany was just a mess, and other countries too. They'd had so much bombing going on. There was a need for rebuilding. Now, I wasn't old enough to help with that at the time. I was born in '48. But there are a lot of things we can do after the war is over. There's been plenty of wars since the Second World War, and there's chances for us to help to rebuild. And I think we should. We should get our, like Mennonite Disaster Service isn't exactly because of war, but that's an example of getting dirty and helping people who are in need after a disaster. So there you go. Now, many believers would apply the Sermon on the Mount to their personal lives, but not to international affairs. And my question is, how small does the conflict have to be before the Sermon on the Mount applies? How small does the conflict have to be before the Sermon on the Mount actually applies? What about if your own friend here in Manitoba were to get killed in a violent act? What if you were the parent of a 17-year-old son who gets killed in Alberta? This takes me to the 1999 story, which some of you may remember. The man's name was, the boy that got shot was called Jason Lang, L-A-N-G, and that was from Taber, Alberta. I happened to be in the W.R. Myers High School in Taber about 5 years ago, roughly. I was watching Fiddler on the Roof. The high school had put that thing on. 2017, I guess that's more than 5 years. Dale Friesen was a teacher in that particular, and he was the director of the drama. He played the role very well of the father in that Fiddler on the Roof. So Wilbert and Hilda Friesen's son was there. So at that school, earlier in 1999, Todd Smith, a high school dropout, walked into his school, the very school that we were in, and began firing at students, killing Jason Lang and wounding Jason's best friend. How many of you remember that? Not many. It was in the news, of course, but it's a long time ago. Now, if Jason was your son, grandson, or friend, how would you react to such an evil act? Dale Lang, the father to Jason, was the pastor of the Anglican Church in Taber. He said some remarkable things after this shooting. He said, 20 years earlier, before my conversion, keyword conversion, I would have wanted revenge. But now I choose to forgive. He took high school students to the hallway where his son Jason had been killed. And there he asked God to reclaim the school for the students. He asked God to take away their fear. And he asked God to have mercy on this broken society that he said, we are all hurting. Peter Wiebe was a pastor of the EMC church in Taber, and that's why I was there. I was conference pastor at the time. And so Peter Wiebe, I don't know him very well, but I got this from him. He said he had known the Langs for about 5 years. And here's what Peter Wiebe said about his pastor friend, Dale Lang, the father. Lang challenged Christians to share the gospel openly. After the shooting, Christian teachers led a number of students to the Lord. There was a bully at the W.R. Myers School who had been picking on the Christian students, and one in particular had to eat with the staff for his own protection. Later, that same bully asked this same Christian student to have lunch with him. A prominent Mormon high school teacher in that school was pressuring students to go to the local Mormon seminary. After seeing how Lang responded, he changed his mind and he asked for his own prayer for himself. Later, Dale Lang was asked to speak to 5,000 youth in a rally in Red Deer, Alberta. So, where is all of this coming from? Dale Lang says, before he believed. What happens at conversion that changes how we treat our enemies? When we believe, we accept what Christ did for us. And now we want to go to some New Testament teaching on how to get rid of your enemies. And I thought maybe we would do this together. Let's see if we can get these slides up there. And we're going to start with all the females in here together, young and old. We'll read this first one, which is Romans chapter 5, verse 8. And then the second one, I'll read with you just so we kind of keep the rhythm together. So I'll be reading with the ladies. You won't mind, will you? I'll be reading with the ladies. And every second time it'll be the men and then the ladies. So first is the ladies. Ladies first, right? If there's heavy doors or big dogs, it's always ladies first. So, well, that's the same here. So the ladies have to break the ice and show us how to read properly. And read with confidence as if you mean it. Are we ready? We're going to start with but. Here we go. But God demonstrates His own love for us in this. While we were still sinners, Christ died for us. Men, here we go. But to you who are listening, I say, love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who mistreat you. If someone slaps you on one cheek, turn to them the other also. If someone takes your coat, do not withhold your shirt from them. Give to everyone who asks you, and if anyone takes what belongs to you, do not demand it back. Do to others as you would have them do to you. If you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners love those who love them. And if you do good to those who are good to you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners do that. And if you lend to those from whom you expect repayment, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners, expecting it to be repaid in full. But love your enemies, do good to them, and lend to them without expecting to get anything back. Then your reward will be great, and you will be children of the Most High, because He is kind to the ungrateful and wicked. Be merciful, just as your Father is merciful. So now I'm going to ask you a number of rather personal questions. And I want you to know, this thing is pretty crooked by now, and that's from pointing for 45 years. But there's 3 of them pointing back at me. So, you know, I have done some thinking about this. We even prayed about this, didn't we, Dustin? So I want to apply this stuff to myself, too. Some of this stuff is very hard for me to apply. So I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions. They're not on the screen. Just listen. Here we go. Are you holding a grudge against those who think that they are more spiritual than you are? Are you holding a grudge against those who are more talented than you are? Are you holding a grudge against the person who always has or had higher marks than you in school? Are you holding a grudge against those who turn their nose up at you? Are you holding a grudge against the person who just bought the property that you wanted for years? Are you holding a grudge against those who allow themselves things that you don't allow yourself? Are you holding a grudge against your father for not blessing you properly, affectionately? Are you holding a grudge against your mother for being too bossy with you? Are you holding a grudge against a sibling who knows that he or she is the golden child of the family? Are you holding a grudge against the pastor who initiated hurtful church discipline in your family? Are you holding a grudge against someone who cut you off on the road? Are you holding a grudge against someone who won't pay you money that he owes you? Yes, we do have our enemies, don't we? I hate to admit it. I hate to admit it. After all, we're Christians, aren't we? But, you know, I don't generally spit at them. I don't shoot at them, even with a cordless drill. But I let that affect my relationship with them. I don't love them. I don't love them very much. I put up with them, but I don't really love them. So how do you get rid of your enemies? Like Jesus, demonstrate that you love them even before they deserve it. Before they deserve it. James Forrest said, I think we could read these together. They're on the, yeah, there they are. Let's read them all together. Men and women, everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, girls, boys. The most remarkable miracle is not the transformation of water into wine. It is the transformation of an enemy into a friend. Isn't that something? I don't know who this guy is, but it makes sense to me. John L. Mackenzie. Are you ready? If I taught, no, not I, sorry. I was abbreviating and I made a fatal mistake here. Okay, let's try again. If Jesus taught us anything, he taught us how to die, not how to kill. You know, and I've said that. I've only once really been in danger of getting sawed to pieces by a chainsaw, but that wasn't really a persecution for righteousness' sake. I don't think he was drunk as a skunk, so I don't think he knew what he was doing. I don't think he would have remembered it the next day. And we didn't even report it to the police. Mind you, I did go and visit him in jail, but he didn't go to jail because of that. He was in Stony Mountain later on. We had a nice chat, but this never came up. I don't know if he even remembered it. So that's how it goes. So anyway, how to die rather than to kill, okay? And then this fellow is Ken Neufeld. Some of you know Ken Neufeld. I was on the board for Ken and Carolee for quite a few years. I just stepped down now, 10 years or more. He said this, I like this one. He grew up on a farm near Niverville, so he may know something about rats. Let's read this together. Holding a grudge is like eating rat poison and expecting the rats to die. That makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? We do some very irrational things. All right then. Jesus said something here too. It's a bit of a longer one. Let's read this one together. Therefore, if you are offering your gift at the altar and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there in front of the altar. First go and be reconciled to your brother, then come and offer your gift. And then we have Abraham Lincoln. Many people think he was a good president. I never had the privilege of meeting him. I'm a bit too old, I guess, or I'm too young. Which is it? But in any case, I was pretty impressed when I read this. Let's read this together. The best way to get rid of your enemies is to make them your friends. There's a lot of repetition here, isn't there? And I'm doing this for a reason, because we need to hear this again and again. I need to hear this all the time. How do you get rid of your enemies? By loving them. You and I are not guaranteed that they will love us back. We are not guaranteed that they're going to love us back. No. But you have the assurance that you have done what Christ wants you to do, and you can experience God's peace. You can put your head on the pillow and sleep. You can reach out and accept Christ's forgiveness for yourself too. I'm going to take a look at my clock. Oh, it's 11 o'clock. Can I give you about a dozen practical, am I okay? A few minutes? A dozen practical ideas on dealing with a difficult person in your life. Number one. Now my tongue is in my cheek now. Okay? Separate from that person. Quit your job. Stop going to the family gathering. Change churches. Move to another location like Bolivia, out in the bush somewhere. Get a divorce. Okay, the others are not so much with the tongue in cheek. So here we go. Heap coals of fire on their head. Be nice, even if they continue to pester you. I'll give you an example. Louis was one of our tenants where I worked before I started here. On Winnipeg Avenue. He was from Chile. You would have had a good time with him. And so when he first moved in, he complained loudly that he had no screen on his window. He says, the mosquitoes are going to come in and I'm going to get sick. It's not good. And he was talking very loud. And I didn't appreciate the volume nor what he had to say, but I thought, well, I'll listen to him. He seems to be upset. I don't know why. So we ordered a new screen for him, but that takes a while. So I thought, well, I'll be nice to Louis. So I went and made a temporary screen. I was actually pretty proud of it. It looked pretty good. It wasn't like the original, but it kept the mosquitoes out. A small little screen, I built that for him, and I put it in there. It seemed to change the attitude that he had. After that, he became quite friendly with me. We kept on using the word amigo. It's a very nice word. So that's something we can do. I don't always do it that well. I just thought I'd take a good example because I like to look good. Remind yourself that you don't have to win every argument. News. Most recent news is you don't have to win every argument. Assess the emotional factors, like what is actually causing this tension. Try to de-escalate the tension. You might even want to admit that you may have contributed to the tension. Maybe you were on your high horse. From there you can see everything well until you fall off. Maintain eye contact during the conversation with the person that you're having trouble with. I don't do that very well. Look them straight in the eye, not to glare at them, but get friendly eye contact. It's a good thing. If none of your moral standards are violated, then be willing to follow the opposition's plan. If there's two plans, but you like yours better, right? Admit that you have some weaknesses in your position too. And then you can also restate why you feel that your position has merit. That's okay, you can say it again. Appeal to higher authority if you have to. Go to a third party. Sometimes mediation is in place. You can even get a professional mediator and it helps. Or a wise friend can just help you as a third party. Hopefully not related to you. It's better outside the family. Pray for yourself. Pray for your opposition. Wait for the nudging of the Holy Spirit. Remember that God sees both sides and that He is the ultimate judge. And that's my last. I see some of you are writing furiously, and if you would like this whole list, I have my copy of the sermon, and the projector people have one. So I have two. And if there's others who would like this, I can email this to you. So these are practical ideas, some of which I have picked up from others, of course, and from experience. I'm sure you would be able to add many more if you were to do so. Father, we thank you that you loved us before we were ever lovable. And you died on the cross, Jesus, when we did not deserve it. Thank you so much. And with this forgiveness, which is now oozing out of our pores, help us, Lord, to take that risk, to reach out to the person who may not be lovable, who may never have had love in their life and is continuing to be a pest, to love these people unconditionally as you have loved us. In Jesus' name, amen.